My father closed an $11 million deal before breakfast. But when I called him from a hospital parking garage and begged for just $3,600 to save my little girl's heart, he laughed. I thought that call would break me. I had no idea it would break his whole fake perfect world instead. My name is Quinn Carter. I am 38 years old. I am a captain in the United States Army, and I have served for almost 17 years. I have jumped out of planes. I have stood in rooms where one bad choice could cost lives. I thought I knew fear. I thought I understood pressure. But none of that felt like sitting in a hard plastic chair outside the heart unit at Walter Reed, hearing my 8-year-old daughter's monitor beep through the wall and knowing a bill was standing between her and the surgery she needed. My daughter's name is Lily. She was born with a heart that never formed the right way. For years, we lived carefully. Medicine. Checkups. Hope. We learned how to smile in the middle of scary things. We had good weeks, then bad weeks, then good ones again. I told myself we were managing. I told myself we had time. Then 2 weeks earlier, her heart doctor sat across from me with that soft voice doctors use when they are about to change your whole life. He told me the valve could not wait anymore. Surgery now. Not later. Not next month. Now. Even after insurance, even after what the Army covered, I still came up short. $3,600. That was the number I kept staring at. $3,600. A small number to some people. A wall to me. A wall between my child and the table that could save her life. You need to understand something about me. I do not ask for help unless I have already run out of road. I was raised to believe asking meant weakness. Weakness meant shame. Shame meant you did not belong. So before I ever picked up that phone, I had already sold my car. I had emptied the savings account I started after my first deployment. I had called old friends I served with years ago. Men and women who had their own bills, their own families, their own lives. Every call cost me pride. Pride gets heavy when you are broke. Still, I was short. I told myself I would not call him. I had made that promise long ago. Maybe around the 5th birthday of mine he missed. Or the 12th. Or the one after that. I stopped counting after a while because counting made it hurt more. But Lily's surgery was 3 days away, and I was out of strong choices. So I sat in my car in that hospital garage, gripped the steering wheel with one hand, and called my father for the first time in almost 2 years. He answered on the 4th ring. I heard him before he even said my name. Loud. Happy. Proud of himself. He was talking to someone else in the room, brushing me aside like I was a call he did not feel like taking. Hold on, he said to them. Then to me, with fake surprise, Quinn. Well. This is unexpected. I kept my voice flat because if I let it shake, I knew I would fall apart. I told him I was not asking for a gift. I was not asking for some piece of an inheritance I already knew I would never see. I was asking for a loan. $3,600. I told him I would sign anything he wanted. I told him it was for Lily's heart surgery. There was a pause. For 1 week, foolish second, I thought maybe he would soften. Instead, he laughed. Not a loud, cruel laugh. Something colder. Worse. The kind of laugh a person gives when he thinks your pain is inconvenient. Do you know what I did this morning? He asked. I closed an $11 million deal. $11 million, Quinn. Before 10 a.m. He wanted me to hear the size of it. He wanted me to feel small next to it. I swallowed and said I was not asking about his deal. I was asking about his granddaughter. Then his voice changed. It turned hard in a way I knew from childhood. You will get nothing from me, he said. My money goes to people who understand family. People who show up. People who do not disappear for years and then call when they need something. I almost laughed then, because the lie was so big. He was the one who disappeared first. He was the one who moved on before the ground even settled over my mother's grave. He was the one who built a shiny new family and left me standing outside it, trying to act like I did not notice. But I did not have the strength for that fight that day. Not with Lily's surgery hanging over me like a storm. So I said nothing. And my father hung up on me. I sat there staring at the phone, waiting for it to ring again. Waiting for an apology I should have known would never come. The garage hummed with cold lights and faraway engines. My chest felt tight. Not from anger. Not even from grief. It was something older than that. Something cracked open inside me that I had spent years trying to keep closed. Then someone knocked on my window. I looked up and saw Aunt Helen, my mother's younger sister. She was 63. She lived on a fixed income. Her coat was old. Her shoes were worn. And she stood there in the cold with an envelope in both hands like she was carrying something holy. I rolled down the window. Before I could speak, she placed the envelope in my lap. "It's not much," she said softly. "But it's what I have." Inside was $3,000. Cash and a cashier's check. Money I later learned she had been saving for a new roof. Her roof had been leaking since spring. She had patched it with tarps and prayer and stubbornness. And now that money was in my lap because my daughter needed a heart surgery. I looked up at her, and I could not get a single word out. I just cried. Not the quiet kind. Not the strong kind. I cried like a little girl who had held too much inside for too long. I cried in that parking garage until my shoulders shook. And Aunt Helen stood there, one hand on the top of my car door, waiting for me to breathe again. That was the day something changed in me forever. The richest man I knew had just told me I was not worth a dime. The poorest woman I knew had just handed me almost everything she had without even being asked. That night I sat at Aunt Helen's kitchen table with the envelope in front of me. The room smelled like tea and old wood and safety. I asked her the question I had been afraid to ask for years. Why did she stay when nobody else did? She poured tea but did not drink it. Then she told me the truth from the beginning, slow and careful, like she was opening a door she had kept shut out of love. My mother, Olivia, died of ovarian cancer when I was 19. I remembered the funeral in broken pieces. White flowers. Church shoes. The sound of my own breathing because it felt too loud in the silence. My father standing in front of everyone, giving a speech that sounded beautiful if you did not know him. If you did know him, it sounded empty. What I had not fully seen back then was how fast he moved on. Aunt Helen told me my father, Victor, was engaged to Vanessa within 8 months. Married within 14. She said it calmly, but her eyes changed when she said it. Your mother was barely gone, she whispered, and he was already picking out furniture for a new life. Then came their son, Derek, less than 2 years later. And my father loved that new life. Loved how easy it was. Vanessa did not challenge him. Derek did not remind him of grief. I was the only piece left from the life before. The one he wanted to pack away. But Aunt Helen stayed. She drove me to school when Vanessa had appointments. She sat at my track meets when my father was busy closing deals. She came to my army commissioning ceremony and cried harder than I did. My father mailed me a card 2 weeks late with a check inside instead of showing up in person. I talked to him, Aunt Helen said, her voice small now. More than once. I told him, that girl needs her father, not his money. He would go quiet for a second like maybe he heard me. Then he would change the subject. I asked her why she never told me all of this before. Why she let me keep hoping he would change. She looked at me with tired kindness. Because you needed that hope, she said. And I did not want to be the one to take it away. Some losses people have to feel in their own time. I held the envelope tighter then. It felt heavier now, not because of the money, but because of the love inside it. She told me the $3,000 had been for her roof. I told her I could not take it. I told her I would find another way. I told her her roof mattered too. She took both my hands in hers. Her fingers were thin, but her grip was strong. Lily is my great niece, she said. A roof can wait. A heart can't. That night, even with her money, I was still short. $600. I lay awake in her guest room doing numbers over and over in my head. I thought about selling the ring my mother left me, the last thing I had from her. Around 3 in the morning, I decided I would do it. Lily's surgery was happening no matter what. I would not let a number stop me. But I did not have to sell the ring. The next morning my phone buzzed. A wire transfer. $600 exactly. It came from Master Sergeant Cole Daniels, a man I had served with years ago. We had done 2 tours together. During a training accident once, he carried me on his back for miles and never mentioned it again, like helping someone was just part of breathing. The message with the transfer said, "Heard about Lily. Get her fixed. Pay it forward someday." That was it. No big speech. No demand. No guilt. Just love put into action. I called him crying, and he brushed it off fast, like men like him always do. He told me to focus on my daughter and stop wasting tears on him. Then he hung up before I could thank him properly. I sat in that quiet room and felt something sharp and warm at the same time. Gratitude. Not for the money itself. For the people. For the people who showed up. The next afternoon, I signed the final papers at the hospital desk. Every dollar was there. Every gap was closed. Not by blood. Not by wealth. By people who chose me anyway. When the nurse rolled Lily's bed toward the operating room, she held the stuffed rabbit I bought her the day she was born. Her little hand gripped it so tightly, and she looked so small in that bed, that I thought my chest might split open. But I kissed her forehead and smiled because children study your face before they decide how scared to be. And in that moment, I knew something with painful clarity. No matter what happened next, I already knew who my real family was. Not the man bragging about $11 million. The woman who handed me her last $3,000 with no strings attached. The waiting room outside a children's heart unit has a silence all its own. Not a peaceful silence. A terrified one. It is the sound of people holding their breath and pretending they are not. Parents stare at magazines without seeing them. Grandparents check phones every few seconds. Everyone waits for the doors to open. I sat there for 6 hours with Aunt Helen beside me. By the 4th hour, I could not feel my fingers because I was gripping her hand so hard. When Dr. Moreno finally walked through those double doors, her mask hanging around her neck, I looked at her face before she said one word. And I knew. Lily was okay. She did great, the doctor said. Better than great. The valve repair went exactly how we hoped. She's going to have a strong heart, Captain Carter. I do not remember standing up. I do not remember crossing the room. I only remember Aunt Helen's arms around me and both of us crying so hard we could barely breathe. Not sad tears this time. The kind that empty all the fear out of you at once. Lily woke up that evening, sleepy and pale, blinking at the bright recovery room lights. The first thing she asked for was not me. It was her rabbit. And somehow that made me laugh through my tears, because it meant the table had not taken the best parts of her. My brave little girl was still there. I sat by her bed until she fell asleep again. I watched the steady rhythm on the heart monitor. Strong. Smooth. Safe. For the first time in weeks, I let myself believe the worst part was over. I was wrong. The next morning, while Lily was still sleeping off the medicine, my father walked into the hospital. A tiny, foolish part of me still hoped he had come to see his granddaughter. Hoped the surgery had shaken something awake in him. That hope died the second he opened his mouth. "Where's Helen?" he asked. "No hello." "No, how is Lily?" "Nothing." I told him she had stepped out for coffee, and I asked what he wanted. He said Aunt Helen had taken money that belonged to the family and that he expected it back immediately. For a second I really thought I had heard him wrong. That was her money, I said. Her savings. She gave it to me for Lily. It's family money, he snapped, like that explained everything. And it is inappropriate. She is using your situation to make herself feel important. She has always wanted to force herself into places where she does not belong. Right then, as if the universe wanted to show me exactly what kind of people they were, Vanessa stepped into the hallway behind him. Her arms were crossed. Her face wore that calm little smile she always used when other people were hurting. We all knew this was coming, she said loud enough for me to hear every word. Helen loves playing the martyr. She probably feels like some big hero now. Derek came a few steps behind her, barely looking up from his phone. He gave one lazy shrug. Don't let her fool you, he said. She's not a hero. She's just broke and bored and wants attention. Something inside me, something that had gone quiet for years just to survive, stood up. I stepped between them and the hall that led to Lily's room. That woman, I said, and my voice was low and steady, sat with me through every part of my childhood none of you cared enough to show up for. She gave me the money that saved my daughter's life while you were bragging about $11 million. So no, nobody is taking that money back. And nobody in this family comes near my daughter's room again unless I say so. The hallway went dead silent. My father looked stunned. He was not used to me talking back. He was not used to me standing my ground. For 1 second, I saw it on his face. He was trying to understand who I had become. Then came the anger. You'll regret this, he said, pointing at me. All of you will. Vanessa tugged his arm and muttered about how ungrateful I had always been. Derek shook his head and followed them, already scrolling on his phone again before he even reached the elevator. I stood there shaking after they left. Not because I was scared. Because I had finally said it. 20 years of swallowed pain had finally found a voice. Aunt Helen came back a few minutes later with 2 cups of vending machine coffee. She saw my face and knew something had happened. I told her everything. She did not look surprised. She handed me 1 coffee and said, Victor has spent his whole life threatening people, Quinn. It is the only tool he ever trusted. Then she looked toward Lily's room. But we're not the ones who should be scared now. At the time, I did not fully understand what she meant. I understood a few weeks later when she showed up at my apartment carrying an old wooden box. By then Lily was home and healing. She slept long, deep hours at night, the kind only children can sleep after their bodies survive something huge. The house was finally quiet enough for me to think. Aunt Helen set the box on my kitchen table. It was old, with soft worn corners and a little brass latch turned green with age. This was your mother's, she said. I kept it after the funeral. I always meant to give it to you when you were ready. I think you're ready now. Inside were letters. Old photos. Bank papers folded so many times the creases looked ready to break. There were pictures of my mother laughing in ways I barely remembered. Alive. Bright. Young. Then near the bottom, inside a plain envelope, was something that made my hands go cold. A handwritten note from my mother. And beside it, a will that was not the one I remembered hearing about after she died. This one talked about an investment account she had opened in my name. Money from her own inheritance. Money she wanted protected for me. Money meant to stay separate. Safe. Mine. I read it once. Then again. Then a 3rd time, because my mind would not accept what my eyes were seeing. That account should have held a large amount by the time I turned 25. Years ago, when I had asked my father about it, he told me it had been lost in a bad investment. He said the market had wiped it out. He told me he was sorry. I had believed him. Worse, I had apologized for asking. Aunt Helen watched my face as the truth hit me. Your mother told me about that account before she got sick, she said. She was proud of it. Proud that you would have something that was truly yours. Something Victor could not touch. I spent the next few nights barely sleeping. I went through every paper in that box. I matched dates. I followed numbers. I checked old records Aunt Helen had saved without even knowing if they would matter one day. They mattered. The money had not vanished. It had been transferred. Moved straight into a holding company tied to my father's real estate business more than 20 years earlier. Around the same time he expanded his office building. I felt sick. Not because of the money alone. Because this meant the lie had lived for decades. I took everything to a lawyer named Lauren Diaz. She handled estate fraud cases. Aunt Helen found her through a support group. That fact alone told me how many families broke this way behind closed doors. Lauren read every page carefully. She asked calm questions. She took notes. 2 hours later, she leaned back in her chair and looked at me with quiet certainty. "This is not just a messy family problem," she said. "This looks like a pattern of taking money that did not belong to him. If these records are real, your father moved funds meant for you into his own business. That is very serious." Then she found something worse. An old life insurance policy on my mother. I had never known it existed. Part of that payout should also have reached me when I became an adult. It never did. That money had also been swallowed by my father's business. I sat in Lauren's office and felt something inside me shift forever. This was not about $3,600 anymore. It was not even about money. It was about being told for 20 years that I did not matter, while all along I mattered enough to steal from. Lauren folded her hands and said, "You have a real case, Quinn. It will not be fast. It will not be easy. He has resources. But the paper trail is strong. If you want to do this, we can." I thought of Lily sleeping safely at home. I thought of Aunt Helen's roof money. I thought of Sergeant Daniels wiring $600 without blinking. I thought of my mother writing my name in careful loops, trying to protect me even after she knew she might not stay. And I thought of my father laughing about $11 million while his granddaughter waited for heart surgery. "Yes," I said. "I want the truth." Lauren nodded. "Then we build." And build we did. Within 2 weeks of Lauren sending formal letters and requests for records, my father knew what was coming. He called me himself. No Vanessa. No Derek. Just him. His voice had that old swagger. The sound of a man who had never been forced to answer for anything. "You think you can afford to fight me?" he said. "My lawyers charge more in an hour than you make in a week. You'll go broke before this ever reaches a courtroom." I let him talk. In the army, I learned something useful. The loudest person in the room is often the most afraid. When he finished, I said, "I think you'll find I have more support than you expected." Then he laughed and hung up. What he did not know was that this had already stopped being only my fight. Word had spread through old army circles. Sergeant Daniels connected me with a legal fund that helped veterans and service members dealing with family financial abuse. They agreed to cover a large part of the cost. A retired Army JAG officer, Colonel Avery Whitman, who once mentored me, offered to review every document for free. Then one of my mother's old friends, Elena, came forward with letters from my mother talking about that same account in her own handwriting. The case got stronger. Vanessa, of course, started her own war. I heard from relatives that she was telling everyone I only came after my father because I heard about money. That grief had made me greedy. That Aunt Helen had poisoned me against him. It hurt. Not because I believed her. Because people like her know exactly how to touch old wounds. Derek texted me too. Cold little messages. "Hope this makes you feel powerful. Dad built everything from nothing. You want to burn it down over old papers." I never replied. My energy belonged elsewhere. Then Lauren's forensic accountant found something none of us expected. My father had not only taken from me. There were strange gaps in money connected to Derek's trust too. Missing pieces. Odd withdrawals. Records that made it look like my father treated every family fund like his own wallet whenever his business needed quick cash. When Lauren told me, I felt something strange. Not joy. Not pity. Just a sad kind of understanding. Even the favorite child had only ever been safe as long as he was useful. Then my father made a mistake. He fired his longtime accountant, Maria Santos, after more than 15 years. He was trying to cut off a witness before she could be forced to speak. Instead, Maria called Lauren herself. She had seen things for years, she said. Numbers moved around. Accounts treated carelessly. Questions shut down fast. She had been too scared to act while she still worked there. Now she was done protecting him. By the time mediation day came, the image my father loved so much had already started to crack. He still walked into that room like a king. But I walked in with the truth. The mediation room was small. Beige walls. Long table. No warmth anywhere. The kind of room built to make people feel like emotion should stay outside. My father wore his best suit. The one for big deals. Vanessa sat beside him looking stiff and annoyed. His lawyer, Grant Foster, looked young and busy and far too sure of himself. Lauren sat next to me with a folder full of months of work. My father opened by talking to the mediator instead of me. "This is a family disagreement that has been blown out of control," he said. "My daughter is emotional. She is grieving. She is being influenced by people who do not want what is best for her." Lauren let him finish. Then she opened the folder. One document at a time. Transfer records showing my mother's account moved into his business. Insurance papers showing money that should have reached me never did. Maria Santos's signed statement describing years of flexible numbers and troubling account behavior. Every time my father tried to interrupt, Lauren placed another paper on the table. Each one took a little more color out of his face. He called it misunderstanding. He called Maria bitter. He called the records incomplete. Lauren answered every move with proof. Then Aunt Helen was called in. I had not realized how hard this would be for her until I saw her hands tremble. She had spent her whole life staying quiet to keep peace that never really existed. Now she had to speak in a room built for conflict. But she did it. She told them about my childhood. About missed events. Empty promises. Begging my father to show up for me and watching him choose something else every time. She told them about the wooden box. About how wrong it always felt that my mother's gift had simply disappeared. Then her voice cracked, and she said the words that filled the whole room. "I should have spoken sooner. I let fear keep me quiet. I won't do that again." Grant tried to say Aunt Helen was biased. Old resentment. Family anger. But papers do not care about feelings. Records do not lie because someone's tone is calm. And every single thing pointed the same way. Then the strange twist came. Derek had quietly hired his own lawyer. The second his lawyer saw the new information about Derek's trust, he asked for a break. I looked across the room and watched my stepbrother's face change. For the first time, the lazy boredom was gone. He looked scared. Truly scared. He was finally seeing it. The father he defended had been using him too. Vanessa tried to leave during the break, claiming a headache. But her name was on several accounts as well, and Grant asked her to sit back down. She did. Slowly. Quietly. When mediation started again, my father was different. Still proud. Still stubborn. But quieter. Not preparing attacks anymore. Absorbing. At one point, he looked at me, and something moved across his face that I had never seen before. Not love. Not exactly shame. Maybe recognition. Maybe for the first time in his life, he saw me clearly. I was not there for revenge money. I was not circling his empire. I was the only person in that room who had only asked for what was already mine. By the end, it was obvious there would be no easy private fix. The evidence was too strong. Too many people were involved. Too much had already surfaced. My father's lawyer asked for time to discuss settlement terms instead of pushing toward a full trial. That told me everything. On the drive home, Aunt Helen sat beside me in silence for a long time. Then she looked out the window and said, "I think today was the first day your father ever really saw you." 3 days later, he showed up at my apartment. Unannounced. I opened the door, and for one strange second, he looked smaller. Not shorter. Just less solid. Like the ground under him had finally gone hollow. He was not there to say sorry. I knew that fast. He wanted Aunt Helen to pull back her testimony. He wanted me to drop the case before the settlement became public, before words like fraud and misused funds started following his name into every room. "You're destroying everything I built," he said. I stayed calm. Years ago, I would have screamed back. Now I knew better. "You're not here because of paperwork," I said. "You're here because for the first time in your life, someone has proof." He started reaching for another argument, but I held up my hand. "I'm not fighting for your approval anymore," I said. "But I do have something for you." I handed him an envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $3,000 made out to Aunt Helen. I had paid her back from the first part of the settlement money. Also inside was a short letter. In the letter, I told him that whatever debt he believed existed between us was over. I did not owe him gratitude. I did not owe him loyalty. I did not owe him a lifetime of waiting for him to choose me. I also handed him a photograph. It was Lily in her hospital bed the day after surgery. Pale. Small. Tired. Still smiling. On the back I had written one line. "She's alive, not because of you." He read the letter. He looked at the photo. And then, for the first time in my life, I saw my father cry. Not angry tears. Not fake hurt. Real ones. Quiet ones. The kind that come when there is nowhere left to hide. "I didn't know how to do this," he whispered. "Any of it. Being a father. I thought money would be enough." Once, a younger version of me would have stepped toward him then. Would have tried to build a bridge out of those words. But some apologies come after the damage has already grown roots. So I told him, gently, that I hoped he found peace someday. Then I closed the door. The months after that changed everything. The settlement forced my father to sell major pieces of his real estate business. Restitution had to be paid to me, to Derek's damaged trust, and to cover legal costs tied to the investigation Maria helped uncover. Derek left the family company and moved to another state. I have not heard from him since. Vanessa filed for divorce less than 4 months later, grabbing whatever she could before the rest collapsed around her. Aunt Helen moved in with Lily and me that fall. She sold her old house, the one with the roof she never got to fix because she gave that money to save my daughter. The money from the sale helped us find a bigger home together. She took the guest room. Filled it with books, tea tins, and framed photos of my mother that had stayed hidden in a wooden box for more than 20 years. Now they sit out in the open where they belong. And Lily healed. 6 months later, her doctor cleared her for normal life. Now she runs through our backyard so fast sometimes I have to stop and just watch, because there was once a time I was afraid her heart would never carry her that far. She calls Aunt Helen Grandma Hattie. I never corrected her. Titles like that are earned. When I think back to that day in the parking garage, holding my phone and staring at that terrible number, I remember thinking I had finally lost my father for good. What I did not know then was that I was not losing family. I was finding it. Not the family I spent my life trying to impress. The family that had been standing beside me all along, waiting for me to stop looking in the wrong direction. Sometimes the person who gives you the most is the one who has the least. And sometimes the family that saves you is not the one you were born into. It is the one that shows up when your world is falling apart. If this story touched your heart, tell me where you're watching from tonight. And if you want more emotional family stories like this, stay with us here on Twisted Family Revenge Stories. Because sometimes telling the truth is how healing begins. And sometimes the people who break you are the same people who finally teach you how strong you really are.